So the last few days have been pretty amazing for a number of reasons. The Ukrainians going after oil or airplanes or helicopters or whatever. But politically, the issue here, I mean, the UN General Assembly, wow. With Trump saying yesterday, I think Zelensky or the Ukrainians can win. And then the fallout of that, I'm going to show you some of the fallout. And then Zelensky addressing the UN at the Security Council and then in the General Assembly. Here, we'll start here. I addressed the UN Security Council. We must admit the world's attention to the UN is fading, he says. But listen to what he says here, just 20 seconds.
One of the permanent members of this council is doing everything to prolong the largest war in Europe since World War II. Russia does this with impunity, using its veto power, buying influence, and keeping peace on hold.
The whole point of the Security Council was to keep peace, like to keep the peace, and Russia is using it to actually thwart the peace. And then he is on Fox News on Special Report with Bret Baier. If you're not familiar with this TV station and you've just heard Fox News, yeah, it leans to the right. Bret Baier is going to be the hard news guy, so he's going to be the most of a straight shooter that you're going to have. But listen to the question that he asks and then how Zelensky answers it.
President Trump has indicated that any sort of peace deal, if it comes, with Ukraine and Russia, would end up with Ukraine losing some territory to Russia. Have you accepted that reality, or what concessions do you think, if you got to a negotiating table, you're willing to make?
Now listen how Zelensky answers it, because it's wildly different than what the question was asking.
First of all, it's important that today we had good conversation with President Trump, and I think he understands for today that we can't just swap territories. It's not fair. It's not real.
So you think his position has changed?
Yes, I think so. And God bless it. I really.
And Trump came out with that amazing tweet saying Ukraine will win and Russia's weak. It's a paper tiger.
Count on this, on continuation of his attitude to the territorial question and the question of our sovereignty at the end of the days. And I think that it's not about territories, it's about the position of Putin. He will continue. It will give them...
That's right. And he shifted gears to, it's not about, like, Trump understands this now, and it's not even about territories, about Putin, because Putin's going to keep going until we do something about this. So that was a good answer. Then he's also addressing the UN General Assembly, and here's what he says at the UN General Assembly. We've unleashed, Russia has unleashed this terrible thing upon the world, drone warfare. I've been talking about drones and talking about drones till I'm blue in the face. I'm telling you, it's important. Listen.
Now there are tens of thousands of people who know how to professionally kill using drones. Stopping that kind of attack is harder than stopping any gun, knife, or bomb. This is what Russia has brought with its war. It used to be that only the strongest countries could use drones because they were expensive and complex. Now even simple drones can fly thousands of kilometers. War tech doesn't care about geography anymore. It's now reshaping it.
Thousands of kilometers. That means that in the next war, like let's say a war breaks out between Russia and Europe, it's going to be a drone war, or just like the rocket war between Israel and Iran that was going right over Syria and Iraq. Like that's what we're looking at.
Just recently, airports in Europe had to shut down because of drones. Authorities couldn't even say what kind of drones they were, who sent them, or from where. Last week, North Korea announced the test of a tactical strike drone. That means even countries with limited resources can now build weapons that are dangerous to their neighbors. Ukraine and nations like Saudi Arabia know all too well how dangerous Iranian attack drones are. But what happens when all the types of drones become available, even to small terrorist groups or cartels?
Yeah.
The world moves too slowly to protect itself.
The world moves too slowly to protect itself. And he's urging them, you need action now. And the longer you wait, the worse it's going to be. But the world moves too slowly to protect itself. Here's Kaya Kallas. She's at the Security Council meeting here, I believe. And she's saying it can't be that Russia accidentally violates this airspace 3 times in a week. Really?
It cannot be that Russia accidentally violates 3 times in 2 weeks European airspace. And if it was accidentally, it was a mistake, there has been plenty of time for Russian Federation to apologize and say, sorry, we made a mistake.
Right. Yeah.
Instead,
where was the apology? If it was an accident, if it wasn't intentional, and it was truly an accident, they should have come out the next day and be like, look, we didn't realize that. Thanks for not shooting it down. We'll be more cautious. But it was not an accident.
Russia is testing European borders, probing our resolve, undermining the security of the whole of Europe. Russia will continue to provoke as long as we allow it.
That's exactly what's going to happen. You get more of what you tolerate. Here is Europe will fully abandon Russian fossil fuels by 2027, according to European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, who said this with her after a conversation with Trump. Of course, the Hungarians aren't signing on to that. Hungary has no intention of giving up Russian oil imports, even with Trump's demand. And aren't the Hungarians supposed to be cozy with Trump? Can't Trump just be like, hey, what's going on? Knock it off. Like, stop buying the Russian oil. We'll make you a different deal. Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Ukraine put out this joint statement by Ukraine and the European Union, as well as all these other countries. They're mostly European countries and Japan, right? The U.S. isn't on it, but Japan is, and Hungary is not on it. We stand here together as Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine continues to inflict human suffering and destabilize global peace. This illegal, unprovoked, unjustified, full-scale invasion, now in its 4th year, is a blatant violation of the UN Charter. Good. They ought to spell that out. It's a blatant violation of the UN Charter. And then a little bit further, it says we remain unwavering in our support of Ukraine. We stand with Ukraine militarily, economically, politically, diplomatically. We support a just and lasting peace based on international law and the UN Charter. Our support to Ukraine is about making peace a reality. Okay, now you have to actually do that. You got to back it. It's like Trump's statement yesterday where, okay, that was great words. Now we got to see actions. Okay, speaking of the great words, Don Bacon, a Republican from Nebraska, says, I welcome President Trump's clear support of Ukraine today. This war is about an invader and a victim. Right? It's not just they're killing and they're killing and it's just bad. And we say, no, there's a victim and there's a victimizer, a dictator versus country who wants freedom, free markets, and rule of law. Ukraine will win. You see, Mike Pence, Trump's former vice president from Trump administration 1.0. President Trump is right. Ukraine has fought bravely for 3.5 years since Russia's unprovoked and brutal invasion. With American leadership and the support of NATO, Ukraine can fight and win a victory for freedom. Thank you, President Trump. Boris Johnson from the UK. Whatever you think of Boris Johnson, he was the man, first leader from outside Ukraine really stepping into the breach, being there on the ground with Zelensky shortly after early attacks. Donald Trump is 100% right about Putin's weakness, the weakness of the Russian economy, Russia's abject failures and the war in Ukraine. The U.S. president is right to call for more pressure on Putin now to get this evil war ended. It's time for Europe to step up and time for the UK to show a lead. Okay, good statement. Even the White House put out this statement. Like after yesterday, you were like, well, okay, so was there a zag? I think there was a zag yesterday. Was it more than words? Not yet. It wasn't anything more than words, but it was still a zag. White House put this out officially. He's a brave man, and I'm quoting now, he's a brave man, and he's putting up one hell of a fight. This is President of the United States with President Zelensky. Okay, this is from the official White House account, right? Okay, so what did the Russians have to say? Well, nothing you wouldn't expect. The Kremlin has responded for the first time to Trump's remarks after his meeting with Zelensky. Quote, we cannot agree with everything the American president said, unquote. Trump called Russia a paper tiger with a collapsed economy. And here's another quote by pro-Kremlin RBC Radio. Apparently, Mr. Trump heard Zelensky's version of events, and that became the reason for such an assessment. Well, it's good that he's hearing Ukraine's version of events and not just Russia's version of events. Here, Peskov is saying this is war and we're in the sharpest phase. It's fate defining and we must win it for our children. Russian isn't a paper tiger. We're a bear and there are no paper bears. Well, I looked it up. There are paper bears. So, I mean, I don't know that that excuse is going to hold water. Now, more to the point, though, of being a paper tiger, Adam Kinzinger, former Republican congressman, famously broke with Trump. Good morning. Nobody 3.5 years ago ever imagined that not only would Russia not have air superiority over Ukraine, but that Ukraine would be able to bomb Russian targets in Russia almost without intercept. Russia is failing. It's interesting perspective. And here's General Ben Hodges saying Russia is a big, modern air force. It has failed its two primary tasks. First, gain air superiority and interdict the lines of communication from Poland into Ukraine. The Russian Navy's Black Sea Fleet has a cool name, but it's not a factor. Russia is indeed failing. Two pretty profound assessments. Okay, now, it's failing, and there's consequences of these attacks on these Russian refineries. I saw this and I thought, this is hilarious, right? As fuel shortages spread to most regions of Russia, media has been instructed to, wait for this, listen, blame it on an increase in tourism. Seriously, no, I'm not making this up. Blame it on an increase in tourism, and yet what we know is that Ukraine has destroyed or taken offline 25, 26, 27%, something in that neighborhood at least, of Russia's refining capacity, and is creating a big problem with Russians being able to get gas in certain places. Okay, so I'll do a whole video about that. Let's do it tomorrow, and then I'll do it again on Sunday just to update and that sort of thing. I've been doing it like week over week, but there's so much in it. Okay. Similar to their operations in Romania a year earlier, Russia is pouring hundreds of millions into rigging this weekend's Moldovan primary election. Yeah, that's happening right now. I've seen article after article after article about this, but yep, because if Putin can control them by rigging an election, that's far better than being tied up on the ground like he is in Ukraine. Okay, there's a massive Russian propaganda network quietly operating right now, over 200 fake news sites, all AI generated, some even using Meta's language models. The twist, it's all run by I'm not making this up, a former Florida cop, Florida's in the United States, who fled to Moscow and works with Russian intelligence. How about that? Now, what is Poland doing after last week with Article 4 and violation of its airspace? Well, Poland, Putin says, must be reminded of its Western territories. They were a gift from Stalin. That's what Putin said yesterday. Okay, Vladimir Putin has references historical territorial changes in involving Poland, particularly Stalin's role in reshaping borders after World War II. At the 1945 Yalta and Potsdam conferences, Stalin, alongside Allied leaders, redrew Poland's borders, shifting them westward. Poland lost eastern territories to the Soviet Union, now parts of Ukraine and Belarus, and gained former German lands like Silesia as compensation. Okay, but what he didn't say was that while that was a gift from Stalin, they also enslaved Poland until the 1990s. Like, that's kind of an important point that you just glossed over. Ukraine may deploy combat troops to Poland. What? Ukraine to Poland? Yeah, to help shoot down Russian drones. So to train them, to get them up to speed, to help them with what they need to do. Because what the Poles have been able to do with NATO big guns, they were able to do it, but it was way too costly. The new law, now under debate, would allow Ukrainian forces to operate abroad for joint air defense and training with NATO. And then Poland is now making it legal for citizens of Poland to fight Russians in Ukraine. So something shifted there after this drone attack last week. Bloomberg reports Ukraine has accepted the IMF's revised estimate of $65 billion foreign funding gap through 2027, far above Kyiv's earlier $38 billion figure. So they have a real problem that they have to sort out in how they're going to finance the war. And finally, I'll leave you with this. This doesn't look like it's important, but it might be. There's a victory for digital democracy. YouTube deleted my peaceful account with 2 million subscribers. Now, I don't know who she is, but she's followed by some bad actors like Spetsnaz 007 and Alexander Dugin, and Che Baos and Scott Ritter and RT, Margarita Simonyan. Okay, so meanwhile, they're promoting an account that calls me temporarily alive and raises money for my assassination. Are we still surprised that Kirk was killed and someone attacks the president of the United States? Okay, so what's she talking about? So YouTube is about, listen, this is from Congressman Jim Jordan of Ohio, saying that due to our oversight efforts, Google commits to offer all creators who were previously kicked off YouTube due to political speech violations to return to the platform. Now, that's great in some ways, and that's going to be problematic in others. But more free speech is better, generally speaking. And what you see here is that, so I have a friend who was just preaching and putting his sermons or his lectures from seminary online, and he was taken down for hate speech because he was just preaching what the Bible is, right? That's bad. Okay. Now, what you're going to see is a whole different kind of bad, though, because that means Jackson Hinkle can come back and Scott Ritter can come back. And I defended both of them and saying it should be free speech. I don't like them at all, but I'm a free speech guy, and that shouldn't happen. So you're going to have this. YouTube's going to have more people that could possibly push bad narratives, but a lot of other good people can be back as well that were taken down for maybe not so good, squelching free speech kind of reasons. Nonetheless, this is going to have an effect, and you ought to be aware of this kind of thing. Okay, that's all that I have. Let me go to my shout out for today. My shout out here is for Pezza. Pezza is an undergraduate Patreon supporter. Pezza, thank you for your time and your support of this channel. Thank the rest of you. I want to thank all of you for the likes. If you hit the like button, that really helps me. If you can just get in the habit of it, it'll help significantly. Thanks for the subscribes, the shares, the comments. Tell me what you thought about what you saw here. I really do try to read as much as I can. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.